big heavyweight clash of the season has just happened. Manchester City drawing at home to Arsenal 2-2 in an event-filled game, a dramatic game. It felt like it had a bit of everything. Referee interruptions, red card, long-range screamers, last-minute equalisers, the lot. It was everything that you want in a game of this high stakes. Just, as I say, drama to the very end. You couldn't take your eyes off it at any point. And as a result, shared points. Do you know, coming into this video, and as I was preparing this video, I always try and like sort of categorize how I feel about a game. Who is it better for, what this really means going forward, and how it reflects on the team season. And ultimately, you do that in the easy way of seeing that a team won, and so that obviously benefits a team. But you know, sometimes you can find positives in a defeat. That is possible. So I looked at this game and I looked at the fact that both these teams took a point, trying to see who won in this game and who could be happier about it. And I think, to be honest with you, honestly, both teams will be a bit upset. I think both teams, as the title says, will look at this as 2 points lost as opposed to a point gain. And I know that might seem a little bit harsh on Arsenal. They defended for 45 minutes, but as I'll talk about in this review, I don't think they handled that well at all. I think it was poor game management from Arteta at points. I don't hate the idea of it, and they definitely didn't bottle anything. Let's remove the bottling conversation right up. Nothing was bottled. They approached the game in, I think, an understandable way, in a fair way, in a way that they thought was best reflective of how they were going to get something from the game. It's just how I look at it in hindsight and think, it's not what I would have done. It's not how I think would have been best suited to get a result. And I think a win was so badly needed for Arsenal in this game, even just from a mental aspect, if anything. But stop summarising the game. I'll go into the nitty-gritty of it. First, the City attacking. City would build up in a sort of 4-3-3-ish that would slowly transition into a 3-1-5-1 as Gvardiol would slowly make his way up into a sort of attacking left-back position. It would then invert centrally to form this shape. City would build up as they would, short, centre-back split, Ederson forming a massive part of the build-up, Rodri coming in deep to receive the ball. It was then Kovacic once Rodri sustained his injury. Silva and Gundogan high up in the attacking midfield positions, Savinho and Doku maintaining the width with Haaland in the centre. Arsenal looked to be aggressive with their press. They didn't look to sit back deep and compact until the sending off, really. They looked to be aggressive and trying to prevent City from building up. They did get success, City, though, through that extra man being Ederson and outnumbering Trossard and Havertz, who would stick to the centre-backs, and Rice, with the engine that he has and the aggression he shows when tackling, was pushed up into Rodri to prevent him from getting on the ball and dictating play, as we know Rodri can do. Saka was pushed onto Gvardiol, Martinelli pushed onto Kyle Walker, which created a bit of a disjointment between their shapes. So it meant Saka was formed more into a midfield shape and Martinelli was in sort of like the forward line. So it created sort of diagonal angles through the middle of the park, which if Ederson could get the ball to Diaz, he had an angle to slip it through to either Gundogan or Silva that could pull off into this position here, with Rodri deliberately staying deep to drag Rice out of the picture. And Partey would stick to Silva to make up for the numerical disadvantage they were facing with their midfield shape in the 4-4-2. Saliba would break lines to prevent Gundogan from getting on the ball here. Gundogan lacking a bit of mobility was a lot easier for Saliba to manage. With the way Ederson involves himself and the way the City could adjust and find angles, they could push Arsenal further back, and then this was the shape that was produced once that happened. It was a brave decision by Mikel Arteta to put Calafiori in this game. A gamble worth taking, maybe, and he produced a fantastic screamer on the other side of the pitch, which I'll talk about more when we talk about Arsenal's attacking stage. But he was the target, and I thought he struggled a lot. And that came from a rebound of the midfield of City really disrupting that Arsenal shape, with Gvardiol tucking in to play the sort of left attacking midfield position. We've seen Rico Lewis do it on the right side earlier on in the season. Gundogan as well, Silva tucking in. And Arsenal shape is a mix of man-to-man and a mix of zonal, depending on situations. They're very adaptable. For the first goal specifically, we'll talk about it. If Kyle Walker dropped into this position here to get on the ball, this would be a trigger for Martinelli to come up and try and close him down, as that was his designated marker. Saka would then come onto Gvardiol, Rice onto Gundogan and Partey onto Silva. Savinho would then drop into this space created where Kyle Walker could play the ball around Martinelli into Savinho if Martinelli only half-pressed him. And Calafiori, a number of times in that first half, was guilty of getting far too tight to Savinho, where he use that to his advantage. He could use a quick bit of acceleration, a first touch out of his feet, and he was round the corner, and Calafiori was done for. And he got caught a few times. And where City were fantastic and where the intelligence of those central players really comes into play is Bernardo Silva would make a movement into this position here to drag Partey away. Gundogan would stay a little bit more towards the left to allow Rice to sit closer to him. And this created a space that Savinho could move into the centre of the pitch, dribble into a complete open room. He could do one of two things. One, he could spread the play over to the left-hand side to Doku if the space was created with Timber coming inside, play the ball in between Gabriel or Saliba, who now had a lot more space to have to manage between them, and into Erling Haaland, which he capitalised on to score his goal. And it was a fantastic bit of play from the two of them. Arsenal did try and adapt, but again, it still exposed Calafiori a bit. So again, Martinelli getting caught up into Walker, that still happened. Savinho could stay up a little high and wide now, just to stretch that Arsenal backline. And the reason that he got exposed even more is because there were points where Saka would stay a little bit wider and look to be a little bit more reserved to allow Timber to move inside, and he could protect the wide area a bit more, which is something we'll touch on more of in a second. So as a result, this left Rice and Partey with an overload in that midfield. They had Gvardiol, they had Gundogan, they had Silva to have to deal with. Rice would typically still set onto Gvardiol, Partey in the centre on Gundogan, and this left Calafiori with a choice. Does he stay wide on Savinho, or does he come and try and shut Bernardo Silva off in this right half space for City? And in doing so, he's leaving a man free. Akanji or Rodri or Kovacic can slip this pass into Bernardo Silva, or he could play the ball over the top into Savinho. Gabriel or Saliba couldn't commit to engaging players in this deeper area. They had to stay central, had to stay on Erling Haaland. You cannot allow Erling Haaland to have even a yard of space in big games like this. He'll kill you, as he showed for the first goal. The moment you switch off, the moment you just leave a clear bit of room for him to manoeuvre in and for a teammate to play a pass into him, you're dead. I got the idea that Arteta wanted that back four to remain as central in the box as they possibly could. So when City would look to sustain attacks in the deeper areas of the pitch for Arsenal and use their wide overloads, which would be Bernardo Silva or Gvardiol in the half space supporting Doku and Savinho. They'd get the wider centre backs as well to drive up with the ball to again commit to these overloads. Diaz as well on the left hand side. Martinelli and Saka would do fantastic jobs dropping into that back line, forming the role of full-backs, essentially creating a back six for Arsenal with Trossard and Havertz then dropping into the line to make it a four and compact the centre of the pitch fantastically. City did definitely dominate the opening exchanges when it was still 11v11, just through manipulating Arsenal's shape to how they wanted and getting them forced this far deep was good for City because it opened them up and it allowed more space for the creative players on the edge of the box. But obviously, story of the game, Trossard got sent off, so I'll move him off the pitch now. Then he made a change in the second half, Arteta, that would bring Ben White on. Saka went off the pitch. And so it would turn Arsenal into a 5-4 in the back. So if I just sort this out a bit now. Arsenal would sit deep. They would sit very far back in their 5-4 shape, where City would look to play it into the wide areas, use the wide overloads. And if that didn't open up, they'd play the ball back to the edge of the box, where with now no Rodri because of his injury, no Kevin De Bruyne, they lacked real composure in the middle of the pitch and quality to sustain that pressure and really try and open Arsenal up with quick, incisive passing through the lines, either side, getting the ball out of their feet quick to take advantage of Arsenal's transitioning into shape. And as a result, Akanji, Walker, and Diaz and Walker especially, were guilty of just popping shots off from range, constantly firing it from silly positions. The issue for Arsenal was they conceded pressure too easy, and this is where I go with the 2 points drop, because they went into the second half, okay, a man down, but winning 2-1. He immediately made the change to go Saka off, and Ben White in, went to a flat back five and the four on top. They couldn't break out of this situation. The only transitional threat they had was Martinelli. Havertz on the right was not effective at all. And as I say, they conceded pressure far too early. With City sustaining the attacks they had and Arsenal having to defend for 45 minutes straight after already producing a pretty defensive performance with 11 men, you ran the risk of tiring yourselves out and leaving yourself exposed through that overuse of energy and leaving yourself then unable to deal with gaps that opened up. I thought it was too negative too quickly. I thought it was far too reserved. They took off any counter-attacking threat. It all fell to Martinelli, and when it's just one that you have to be conscious of. It's a lot easier to deal with from a Man City perspective. Havertz, I thought, from that right wing to transition into a striker wasn't effective at all. Saka could have been used to, as I say, break up the pitch. And as well, in terms of having that back five, you had Saka and Martinelli doing the jobs of defenders anyway. They dropped back into full-back positions. Partey would take positions up in the defensive line. So realistically, yeah, you maybe had a little bit more defensive quality, but Saka isn't poor defensively whatsoever. So it just felt so unnecessary. It just felt a bit too defeatist too quick. I get why he did it, I really do. And, a 95th minute equaliser or whatever it is, and if it wasn't for that, Arsenal get 3 points and a fantastic result. But a missed opportunity, I felt. Just far too negative, far too early. But how did they look to approach the game from an attacking perspective? Arsenal didn't sustain a lot of attacks, so you didn't see this a lot. But when it would happen, City dealt with it well from a pressing point of view. Arsenal would build up with the two centre-backs splitting Calafiori as an orthodox left-back position. And, Declan Rice and Partey showing for the ball in these deeper positions. Rice alternating his position with Timber, who would invert into the middle of the pitch, either as the deeper player in the 6 or high up in the 8. And it was more often than not you'd see Timber higher up and Rice deeper, Saka and Martinelli high and wide, Havertz up top, and Trossard in a 10/8 position, dropping off into the left half space when needed. City pressed high, you'd get Haaland in between the two centre-backs and managing that space between them and Raya and pressing whoever was on the ball, moving from player to player. Bernardo Silva pushed onto Partey, Savinho onto Calafiori, Gundogan onto Rice, and Doku sort of dropping in a little bit to track the sort of central movements of Timber. Diaz would engage with Trossard higher up into this area here. And you'd have Rodri/Kovacic, who would just sit a little bit deeper and wouldn't be on a man marking situation. He'd be surveying the land, using his intelligence and reading of the game to move into a position that sort of protected City within transitional opportunities and move to a man that was free. They had the authority to do that. So let's say if Doku didn't fulfill his role dropping into Timber and that pass looked open up from a deeper position from Raya, let's say Rodri could move across and shadow that and just prevent City from getting opened up. That obviously declined in quality once Rodri went off with his injury and Kovacic came on, who just doesn't have that defensive awareness. Also, City would do a really good job of if the ball went to a Gabriel or went to a Saliba and Haaland was caught out of position and couldn't jump to press, you'd get Silva, you'd get Savinho, you'd get whoever was near jumping to press from their marker or shadowing the easy pass into the player they were previously on. And it was a real good collective press from City. But the thing is that Arsenal aren't afraid to go long, as they did a number of times where they'd break out of this press if there wasn't an easier passing opportunity, and they'd go up to Havertz, where he would hope to win his battle with Akanji and get into second ball opportunities to the likes of Saka, Martinelli, Timber, Rice and Trossard. Havertz had a really poor game, couldn't connect, tried to take the ball forward and drive with it and lost it on a number of occasions, couldn't really link up with his teammates because then when he would try and lay it off, you'd get Rodri then covering in from this position to cover that second ball opportunity and shut down that attack easy. So struggled in this game, Havertz. He lost his personal battle with Akanji. So when Arsenal did occasionally push City back, as they did at the end of the first half with the 11 men they still had on the pitch, City did unconventionally try and still press Arsenal high, but their shape became worse the deeper they got. So you get Gundogan and Silva pushing high onto Partey and Rice, who would sit a lot deeper with Haaland sort of managing the space in between the back three. Savinho pushing up into Calafiori. Doku getting caught in between, maybe coming around to Saliba in this area and trying to press the easy pass around the side. As a result, this left a lot of space in between the lines. That was exposed a lot more with Rodri's lack of presence and aura, if you will. And it was on this right-hand side, as Akanji was told to stick with Havertz, so he couldn't really let him free. And as a result, this left Gvardiol in 2-on-1 situations where Timber was free and Saka. And again, once you're in those situations as a defending player, you can't really make a right decision. So let's just say if Rice made this movement to open the lane up with Gundogan coming more inside, Doku not really doing his job defensively if he was caught too high up on Saliba, then this pass could come in and they could link up down this side and get Saka down, who could produce crossing opportunities. If that wasn't on, if Gvardiol maybe covered the run or Kovacic or Rodri moved in, then he could get on the ball and switch the play to Martinelli, who was faced with Kyle Walker one-on-one, and Kyle Walker struggled immensely one-on-one. I spoke about him being a bit of a liability on the ball, which has never been his greatest asset, even when he's been at his peak. But one-on-one defending against quick left wingers is where he earns his money. That's his bread and butter. It correlates with age. He's what, 34, 35. So that's naturally going to cause a decline. But I can't imagine there'll be a case going forward where he is still City's number one right back. Surely you're transitioning it into Rico Lewis, especially in big games. I can understand why Pep Guardiola chucked him in because of his experience in these type of occasions, because of his defending ability against a Martinelli profile. But this game was the perfect game for Martinelli, who's been struggling, who lacks confidence, that he could get against Walker, take him down the line, get around him, and get some good crossing opportunities in the way to the likes of Trossard and Havertz, who didn't make the most of the opportunities when it fell to him. If there's any consolation for City, Arsenal didn't get into this type of shape that much because of how well they pressed, and Arsenal were forced into longer balls instead of sustained, slow, methodical build-up patterns. Into these positions, though, when they would create crossing opportunities, they could win corners where they used their set-piece quality to good effect. Gabriel getting a goal, should have had two, with Arsenal moving the players from the far post into the middle, crowding Ederson, that Gabriel could then come over to the back post, once beating up Doku for the chance he missed, and then Kyle Walker again getting caught horrifically for the goal. And for the first goal for Arsenal, it is worth noting that we saw signs that when Martinelli would get the ball into this position here, he would welcome the underlapping run from Calafiori, who could maybe run off of Savinho, who would maybe lose sight of him, that he could then play to in here. That happened a number of times, and he produced an absolute screamer from that situation. I'll maintain what I said at the start. I thought it was 2 points lost for both. City lacked composure to punish Arsenal going down to 10 men, and for how dominant they were in the first half, to end up at half-time losing the game, I thought was really poor on their end. Arsenal, I think first half, they rode their luck a bit, I think that's fair to say, but they ended up 2-1. The sending off forced them into a state where they felt like they had to protect the 2-1 to a complete lockdown, and I just think that it was the wrong decision in hindsight, but there we go. That's how you judge these football games when you analyse them after the fact. Sometimes it's easy for me to sit here saying this, but I can understand why Arteta made that decision at the time. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Just like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below and tell me why, and subscribe if you want to see more. In a bit, lads. Thank you for watching.